Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is Monday night, 9:30 p.m. Calgary, Alberta, and May the 24th. I'm so happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us. 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. I have my chat room open if anybody wants to come sit in there, and yeah, I'm just so happy to be able to continue to do these shows. It's great. We left off on Friday night talking about the Child Abuse Handbook, written, Dreamcatchers for Abused Children Child Abuse Handbook, written and compiled by the president and best-selling author Donna Shear and CEO and founder and author Sandra Potter. And this Child Abuse Handbook is available for everyone. It is free. It's a free PDF download on the Dreamcatchers for Abused Children website, and you can find that at http://dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. And it's a free PDF download. They want everyone to get a copy because it's got all the signs and symptoms of child abuse, all the different types of child abuse, whether it's physical, sexual, verbal, emotional, psychological, spiritual, you name it. All the signs and symptoms are there, listed there, and also how to report child abuse. So important. And there's all kinds of resources and references and great information on there, and statistics as well. And that's what we were covering. Like last week in the evenings, we were looking at statistics of child abuse and the different the different websites out there that actually have the statistics and how close they are, together. The information's pretty much standard across the board. Might be off by a number or two, but it's pretty standard. And so we were just looking at that, and I wanted to continue on with that tonight and just keep going. And I'm not a professional. I don't hold any professional counseling certificates, therapist certificates, or anything like that. I'm just a person who pays to do my own blog talk show because I really think that child abuse it needs to stop, first of all. And really the only way we're going to be able to prevent child abuse is to get really proactive and find ways to prevent it. Obviously, there are some things that work and then other things don't. It's not a perfect system, but all of us need to find some answers. And, about the only way we're going to do that is to become educated and aware of the situation and to start talking about it. You know what I mean? If we're just going to shove it in the closet and, stick it under the carpet somewhere and put the carpet back down and forget about it, then it's never going to change and nothing will ever be done. I think we have to all become very proactive, regardless of whether we have children or whether we were abused or not. It really makes no difference. As people on this planet, we really have to start focusing on how to fix these problems and how to set programs in place and get things set up. They're actually going to work to help prevent and stop child abuse and all human rights abuses, really. But I focus on child rights. As I study child rights, and I'm in between courses just because I can't afford to go right now. The courses they're not all that expensive. It's just that I don't have that kind of money right now to go, and so I've sort of taken a break. But in the meantime, I study and study and study, and that's all I do really is work and study. And I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and so happy to be. Let me tell you, it's a volunteer position, but I am so happy to be able to do anything at all to try to help make a difference in this world, to stop child abuse. And so that's the whole issue, right? We have to become educated and aware of what's happening, and that's why I just think that everyone needs to start talking about child abuse. It is happening. All you have to do is open up your newspapers, your turn on the television, go online, you can see it. It's there. Every day children are dying at the hands of their parents and caregivers, and every day if they're not killed, they're in the hospital due to abuse-related injuries. Just check with some of your local children's hospitals. It's a serious problem. It's an epidemic worldwide, really, and my focus is right now on national child abuse issues, but my overall focus is the world's children and the world's problems with child abuse. It's really it's a shame, and it's really a shame that people, there's so many of us out there that do care, and we're doing all we can, and then there's the rest of the population that don't care, unless it happens to their child or it affects somebody that they personally know, or, it's just unfortunate that that's what it takes for people to get involved. And I just think everybody should be getting involved because we owe it to these children to stand up for them and to stand up for their rights and to do everything we can, really, with the resources that we have to do something about it, to change it. change it for the better, right? And so that's why I'm doing this show. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, I would just ask that you have someone to okay it, that you listen to this show. I fight for child rights, and I'm going to stand up and fight for child rights until the day I drop. So there's so many child sexual predators out there trying to get a hold of children. The FBI has a great website, and I always mention it on my blog talk shows because I went on there and I checked it out for myself, and I actually did a blog talk show on it. They have some great information on there on how to keep yourself safe on the internet, as well as just how many child sexual predators there are online at any given time. It's in the millions, and it's a real problem. They will do anything they can to get a hold of you. They will use any means that they can to get a hold of you and assault you sexually. So you have to protect yourself, you have to protect your friends, and you really need to be careful what you're doing online and what you're doing in chat rooms. Don't ever give out your real name, your phone number, your address, what school you go to. Don't tell them anything about yourself. Use a fake name online. Don't give them any personal information where they can get a hold of you. And don't believe everybody that tells you they're a 12-year-old with a skateboard and they love to go to the mall, because it could be a child sexual predator out there who's an adult who's just trying to lure you into meeting them after school, and then they attack you and they could kill you, or if they don't kill you, they can seriously injure you. And really what they're going to do is they're going to steal your childhood. They'll steal your innocence away from you, and you'll never ever be the same, and you'll be the worse off for it. And if you survive, that's the whole issue. You keep yourself safe, and there's no sense in living in fear, because fear is not a good way to live. Best thing to do is just get the education. It's out there. The education is out there for people online to learn how to keep themselves safe. And even with the education, you still have to be careful. But at least if you have an idea of what to look for and what to watch out for, you'll be so much better off for it. So that's why I ask everybody under the age of 18 to have an adult okay it that you can listen to this show. And if you're sensitive to the topics of abuse, then you should just turn it off, because I'm talking about child abuse. I'm talking about everything to do with child abuse and human rights abuses, right? So some people are very sensitive, and they really need to know what's good for them to listen to. So just listen at your own discretion, please. And so we'll get right on with the show. We were talking on Friday night about the statistics in this PDF, the Child Abuse Handbook, compiled by Donna Shear and Sandra Potter, and from Dreamcatchers for abused children, right? And it's just horrible. Now, these statistics are pretty standard everywhere you go. 1 in every 3 girls and 1 in every 6 boys will likely be sexually molested before the age of 18. And that's just crazy when you think about that. If you're in a room with 3 girls, chances are 1 of those 3 girls will have been sexually molested under the age of 18. And if you're in a room with 6 men, then, chances are 1 out of the 6 men will have been sexually molested or abused in some way before the age of 18. It's absolutely horrible. It says every 10 seconds a child is raped or killed in the United States. That's statistics that's across the board. It's just about on every single statistic website that's out there. Every 10 seconds a child is raped or killed in the United States. That's not around the world. That's just in the States. Today, up to 5 children will die from abuse or neglect. In 13 seconds, another child will be abused in the United States. And there are 2.9 million child abuse reports made in 1992. Just in that 1 year, there was almost 3 million child abuse reports made. And that's pretty standard across the board. It's about 3 million per year, right? It says, today 6 children will commit suicide. Now that's horrible. Absolutely horrible. Suicide is the third leading cause of death, ages 15 to 24. So that's ridiculous. I mean, you can see that we have some serious problems on our hands, 60 million survivors are former victims of child sexual abuse in America today. That's just in the United States. 60 million survivors are former victims of child sexual abuse in America. That's crazy. That's a crazy amount of people. It's wrong. It needs to stop. More people need to report it. It needs to be reported, and people need to do time. You do the crime, you do the time. Child abuse is a crime. Whether anybody wants to really admit it, it's a real crime. It's a human rights violation, first of all. I study human rights, and I know human rights. I study the UN Convention and the UN treaties and whatnot, and that's what I do. I study child rights. And child rights are human rights. And children have the right to life. They have the right to protection, to shelter, to government, to education, to health care, to food and water and clean living conditions, to having loving home to live in, to religion, to spirituality. They have the right to all of that. And the whole issue is that, people who abuse their children they think that they have the right to abuse their children, when in fact the children have the right to not be abused, and it's the parents or the caregivers or the child sexual predators or the teachers or whoever's doing the abusing. It's the abuser's fault. It is their crime, and they should do the time. I just think that this is such a sad situation that people think it's okay to treat their children the way that they do, or the caregivers think that they should be allowed to treat children the way that they do, and that's why I'm not going to stop talking. I'm just going to keep talking and keep talking and keep talking, and there's a whole bunch of us out here who are doing it, because it's wrong. It will never be right. Abuse is never right in any situation. It can never be right, and I don't care how many people want to stand up for abusers or for people who sexually abuse children, or groups of people who want to make abuse seem like it's no big deal. They will never be right, because there's a difference between right and wrong. And hurting a child is wrong. Abusing a child is wrong. Hurting anyone is wrong, and hurting and abusing anyone is wrong. So why do people think they have the right to do that to children? It's a real sickness, if you ask me. It's an epidemic. It's a plague upon our society, and it's bothered me since day one. I'm a survivor of child abuse myself, and I've lived with it my whole life, and I don't mind talking about it. And the whole issue is that we all need to start talking about it, because we need to stop child abuse, right? It's so hugely important that we find ways to work with parents who are having a hard time coping, who are substance abuse, who have mental issues. The first time there's programs out there that are working, where if there's a case that goes to CPS, gets called in, DHS gets called in, first time offense, the parents are actually put into a program, whoever the parents are, whether it's a single family home or whoever the caregiver is in the situation that abused the child. They are not left on their own ever again to abuse that child, and they are actually, there's whole schools that are actually going, parts of North America that are doing this. It's actually down in the States. And they have people like these CPS and DHS workers actually work with this family to help the parents, because it's the parents' fault, obviously. They choose to abuse, so that's what they do. And the children pay the price, of course. And what they do is they work with these families, and they actually help these people with their issues. And if, unless it's just something like they're so mentally, disabled, the parents, that they cannot ever look after a child, I guess in that case they'd have to take the child away. And what they do is they treat the substance abuse problems. They help the parents find a better job. They help them learn how to cope and learn the anger management so that they don't lash out at their children. They change their perception on the fact that children are not to be abused. They are to be loved and to be, really to be treated properly, right? And this is the whole issue. It is working, but it's just that it's not nationwide. It's only in small sections of the country, and they're just programs that they're trying out. So, eventually we should see some really good change. And I think as long as people are supporting groups out there that are actually making some real difference and making these real, proactive changes, and it's proven that it's working, because what they did is they found out that those parents never did abuse those children again. And because they got whatever it was straightened out, right? And it's just, that's so great. You know what I mean? The rate of I'll have to get that link for you guys. I have this stuff. It's all written down, and I do have it. I just can't remember it off the top of my head. But the rate of the reoffending parent was so small compared to the general population that doesn't get that kind of help. They do tend to go on and abuse their children even more, right? So that's the whole issue. We have to find things that are going to work. So important. So this, this article here, this PDF, is just awesome. It goes on to talk about what is child abuse. How is child abuse and neglect defined in federal law? There's all kinds of great information here. We read through that already. We were looking at some more child abuse facts in the United States. And also, where we left off was worldwide statistics, and that's what I want to continue on with tonight. Worldwide statistics, it says some worldwide child abuse statistics. Worldwide, approximately 40 million children are subjected to child abuse each year. That's from the WHO, 20014. And that's worldwide. 40 million children are subjected to child abuse each year. Suicide is the third leading cause of death in adolescents around the world. So that's the same as in the United States. It's the third leading cause of death in adolescents around the world. One study revealed that about 30% of all severely disabled children relegated to special homes in the Ukraine died before they reached 18 years of age. Now, I've seen lots on that. That's from the Human Rights Watch, 20016. I've done quite a lot of study on that type of thing because I study human rights and child rights around the world, international community development and whatnot, and I have seen a lot of information out there regarding countries that just don't have good things in place. We think it's bad over here in the United States and Canada, but the world, some countries, they're actually allowed to kill their children and families, and no one says anything about it at all. At least here, there's a chance that the abusers and the killers and murderers will be brought before the courts and charged, and they will do some time. But in other countries, it's perfectly legal for people to kill their families off. Nobody cares, and even though it might be a written law somewhere, nobody upholds it. And so that's the whole issue, right? If we think children are at risk here in the United States and in Canada, boy, we better be thinking about the other people around the world who have no protection whatsoever. It's really bad. But first of all, we have to fix problems here at home too, right? And that's why it's so important that we do fix this before it just gets worse and worse. It just escalates out of control. We need to stop child abuse, right? If we can figure out some good things that work here, we can hopefully help implement them in other countries, right? But we need to start here first, you know what I mean? I mean, I agree with that. I'm all about helping the international community because I believe that the world's problems it's the world's problems. But I think that we have to work on ours too. And so that's why I'm both nationally and internationally involved in child rights and human rights, right? Not just one or the other. I decided to get involved in both because I realized that this country needs help too. So does Canada, so does the United States as well, right? So it's not just international. It's here too. We really need to work on this, right? They said that UNICEF estimates that 2 million children died as a result of armed conflict during a recent 10-year period. 2 million children died as a result of armed conflict during a recent 10-year period, and that another 6 million were injured or disabled. That's from Human Rights Watch, 20017. And that's crazy. 6 million were injured or disabled, and nearly 2 million died as a result of armed conflict around the world. Right? In Canada, U.S., and Mexico, over 6.5 million children annually are exposed to sexual materials on the Internet. 1.7 million of these report distress over exposure to these materials. So 6.5 million children annually, that's every year, are exposed to sexual materials on the Internet. Pornography and whatnot, right? Horrible, absolutely horrible. That's just in Canada, the United States, and Mexico, so that's North America. Each year, approximately 1 million more children around the world are introduced into commercial sexual exploitation. That's from Casa Alianza, 20019. And that's horrible. 1 million more children around the world are introduced into commercial sexual exploitation. That's a real problem. That is child abuse, and at its worst. And I tell you what, it's all bad. You can't condone any of it. I don't condone any child abuse, whether it's verbal, emotional, psychological, sexual, physical. It doesn't matter. It's all really wrong. And, to think that 1 million more children every single year all around the world are introduced into the sex trade and sexual exploitation, that's ridiculous, and it needs to stop. And I'd like to see more agencies spring up and bust people. I really would. I'd like to see more people get busted. That'd be great. Bust them all. Sexual abuse statistics vary between countries and reports, but are consistently alarming. One country's research indicates that up to 36% of girls and 29% of boys have suffered child sexual abuse. Another study reveals that up to 46% of girls and 20% of boys have experienced sexual coercion. So, that's ridiculous. Sexual abuse statistics vary, but they say that they're consistently alarming. One country's research indicates 36% of the girls and 29% of boys have suffered child sexual abuse. So that's ridiculous. I mean, that's just absolutely horrible. And that was from the 57th session of the UN Commission on Human Rights. That's where they got that information. So, yeah, I like this PDF. It's a great PDF, and there's all kinds of information on it. It's not just signs and symptoms. It's everything regarding intervention, prevention, recovery, PTSD, protection, getting help, reporting child abuse hotlines, resources, sources, keynotes and whatnot. So they do give all their sources of where they find the material. It's just a bunch of material compiled by Donna Shear and Sandra Potter, really to make a child abuse handbook for people who work with children, especially like daycare workers, people who work with children, teachers, police force, departments and whatnot who want more information. This is kind of it's just a book that's got just about everything in it, and it's not a big textbook. It's very easy to look at. It's easy to see, and it's not hard to read, right? So you can just read it really quickly, and you'll have, if you go through this PDF one time, you'll have enough knowledge to really be able to spot the signs and symptoms of the different types of abuse, and you'll be aware of what to look for. And if you work with children, or if you have a lot of children in your life, around you and surrounded by children, you can keep an eye out for this sort of thing, because a lot of abuse people just don't see, and some is very recognizable, right? A lot of physical abuse. If a child's all battered, well, of course the parents say, well, they fell down. Well, how many times can a child fall down the stairs? You know what I mean? You got to start to wonder about that physical abuse if you start seeing physical signs of abuse. But there's other types of abuse that is not so easy to spot. Very subtle. The child might seem very shy, and if you didn't know that child before and they used to be really outspoken, but now they're really shy, you wouldn't see the difference in their behavior. So if you just met a child and you think, oh, that child's very shy and just sits around by himself, maybe he's just a little bit shy and introverted, and you wouldn't maybe realize that there's emotional abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse possibly going on with that child to make them the way that they are if you don't see the physical signs, right? So that's why it's so important to know the signs and symptoms of child abuse, and then to know how to report it, and then to report it, right? It's so important that we do look out for children in our lives. They don't have anybody doing that, especially in kids who are growing. I don't know who people think are going to report the abuse, especially in the home. If a child's being abused in a home, no one in that home is probably going to report the abuse. It's not going to happen. People that grow up in dysfunctional families do not usually rat out their parents. We could have easily been phoning and calling the police on our parents, right, for the abuse that we suffered. My brother did speak up because he was his teacher noticed he had bruises on his face, and he was wearing a turtleneck in the middle of summer, and so this CPS did step in, DHS, whichever group it was, they did step in, but we were not removed from the home. We were just left in the home, but my parents were told to get court-ordered counseling, and of course they only went twice, and then we moved out of the country. So that's the whole story. But the thing is within the family, I mean, any one of the siblings could have called the cops on my parents. But when you grow up in an abusive home and there's other siblings involved, and you just grow up like that, you just feel that's your life, and that's all you know. So unless somebody tells you that it's wrong, or points out to the fact that you should call the police, you just live it. You live in fear. You live in that. You live in that world, and so that's quite often why families don't report child abuse out of fear, and also just the whole fact that they're so dysfunctional. They don't. They think that's just life, and that's the way life is, right? So, and that's their life, and they live it. That's what happened to me and us, right? So, it's unfortunate, and of course nobody else bothered to report it, and even friends of the family that saw my mom, treating me harshly, right? People did not report it. There was only one family that stepped in for me, and that was when I was 13 and a half, and my mom had cracked my head open with a rolling pin, and I had blood running down my head and down my face and around my neck and stuff. And I went to a friend's house because I was really dizzy and I thought I was going to pass out, and I was a little bit scared. I just wanted to go to someplace to safety, right? And the mother actually, they intervened on my behalf, but my mom did not go to court because it did not get reported. And the whole issue is that I told them not to report it. See, because when you grow up abused, you don't know any better, and really shouldn't be making decisions for yourself like that. So the whole thing is it should have been reported, and I don't blame those people at all. I probably told them, I probably pleaded with them to not tell, you know what I mean, because I did not want to be removed from the home, because I was really the only child that my mom wanted to throw out of the house, right? So I felt I really wanted to stay in the home just to prove a point that I belonged there, and that I was, there's so many psychological reasons for why people do what they do, right? And some people would say, well, that's just crazy, but if you've never lived it, then you wouldn't understand it. And so Yeah, that's the whole issue of wanting to be loved and wanting to be part of that family, even though, there was abuse in that home. I didn't want to be the only child thrown out on the street, which I was. So it bothered me to be the only one that my parents would actually kick out of the house. And so that's the whole issue. Kids do what they do, and there's reasons for it, and so they won't often report the abuse or want it reported. But people owe it to these children to report it, because I think that it should have been reported, and because I think my mom should have been held accountable for that, and all abusers should be held accountable for the abuse that they cause their children. And it's unfortunate so much of it goes unreported, and it just goes. People just are so blind to it. They don't even want to admit that it's happening. And I told some people that were friends of the family. They asked me if my parents were fighting all the time. I said yes, and I told them that I had hit my dad in the head with a bat one time when I was 9 years old, and to get him away from my mom, and they just laughed. They thought it was funny. So this is the whole thing. People only will, they don't want to make the whole situation uncomfortable or change, or they don't want to get involved and ruin the whole family barbecue situation, because if they do report the abuse, then Uncle Joe will have to go to jail, and then he won't be there to cook the steaks next summer, right? This is the whole thing. It changes the family dynamics, and I think that is really one of the biggest issues in reporting child abuse. But you have to look out for the children and protect the children. And two of my brothers are dead. One of my brothers is he committed suicide at the age of 33, and he was a cocaine addict, and it was really because of the abuse that he suffered as a child, and he's the one that told on my dad, and he was afraid. He told that he was afraid to go home. He feared for his life, and we all did. And my other brother died of a drug overdose in a shelter in Calgary at the age of 43, almost 44 years old, and he was a drug addict from the time he was very young, and he had done a lot of damage to himself because of the drug use and whatnot, and he finally just died of an overdose. And they were both really two of the most abused in the family, and you can see what it did to their lives. And it's very, very sad, and I think we should have been removed from the home. So that's why I say everyone just make sure that you are looking out for the children that are around you. Look out and make sure they're not being abused, and ask the questions, and get them some help, and don't try to investigate it, right? They always say it's better not to investigate it. Let the real investigators investigate it, right? And when you do report the abuse, you won't, if you don't want to lead the questions if a child's disclosing abuse to you, because it can be thrown out of court. So there's all kinds of information you can get on how to report child abuse properly, so that if it goes to court, the information will be able to be used in court. And that will, hopefully ensure that the child does not end up back in the home to be killed and murdered at the hands of their parents or caregivers, or the abuse just continue on, because that's so often the case. And so you do want to get this information. You just never know when a child's going to come to you and say that they're being abused or that they have been abused. You have to. How would you handle it? What would you do? You know what I mean? And so that's why this PDF is awesome, and this PDF download here, and you can get it from http dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com, and all kinds of information on that website. That's a great website, and it's updated daily all the time. Like it's updated as soon as new information becomes available. It's updated. There's a whole bunch of people who work on it steady, and it's very current, it's up to date, and it's a great website for information, very current information, and as well as finding information for resources and references and telephone numbers to different local state departments, and how to get help. And if parents are having a problem, and they think that they don't want to abuse their child, but they don't know how to cope, there's all kinds of information on there for everyone. There's information on there for survivors like myself, survivors of child abuse, and so I find it a very healing website. It's a great website, and I would just ask everyone to check it out. And tomorrow night on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio, this kind of show is turned into a Dreamcatchers for Abused Children show, but I just really wanted to talk about this PDF. But Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, we have a Dreamcatchers Talk Radio on Blog Talk radio.com here as well, at www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers. We're going to be on tomorrow night. It's our first annual telethon. It's called Dollar Days Telethon. We're asking for donations. And the reason being is that there is a huge project. Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, CEO and founder Sandra Potter, she wants to get a headquarters in Michigan, and then have branches all throughout the United States and in Canada. And we have no government funding. This is all out of pocket expenses that Sandra Potter and others have been supporting, doing what they do, and also some donations. So people have been donating, and that's what we're hoping is that people will donate. And we're also looking for funding, right? But we need everyone's help. And we have a great program set up, so we hope that you will tune in. Elizabeth Roberts-Brawley, Southern Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, will be on. Tammy Tanko, she's the Western and the North Central Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. She covers pretty much the whole western and northern part of the United States. Donna Shear, President, CEO. No, she's just a president and best-selling author. Let me tell you what she's an author. An awesome author. She is the president of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children at Donna Shear. She'll be on with us as well, and I'll be on too, the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. So we'll have you covered all around the United States and Canada, and I hope that you can tune in and be a part of it. There's going to be a draw for prizes, so you want to get your name in there and how we can contact you. You can contact me or Elizabeth Roberts-Brawley on Facebook or here on Blog Talk Radio. Just leave me a message if you want your name in the draw and how to get a hold of you, because we're going to be drawing for things like Dreamcatchers for Abused Children T-shirts, mugs, like coffee mugs. We have some awesome stuff. And of course, it's all going, we are not for-profit organization, so this is not going into somebody's pocket. This is going to help fund what we do. We are all about awareness, education, awareness, prevention of child abuse, right? So this is to get information out to people, to get information pamphlets out to people, to help people when they're having problems. We can help with resources and whatnot, try to help just anyone who's having a hard time or an issue, whether they're a survivor of child abuse or whether they are an actual child who needs help, right? So it's so important. And I hope you will tune in. We'll be on 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be doing a draw after we get all the names collected. We'll be doing a draw for these prizes. There's going to be books from Shear and Potter Books at lulu.com, and that's Donna Shear and Sandra Potter. They're a publishing company, and they have all kinds of awesome books out there related to child abuse, right, and also domestic violence. Great books. I've read 2 of them now, and they're just awesome. And also some CD, Jim Richardson's CD that he donated really for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. It's our song that he donated and allows us to use for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, which is just so awesome. So I hope that you will tune in tomorrow night and join us live, and just to hear about all the great information that we're going to be talking about, which is what's going to be coming up in the future for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, which is going to make a huge difference in the lives of children everywhere and parents as well, and anyone who deals with children, right? So important. I hope you will tune in. Have a great night, everybody, and take care of yourselves. I'll be back on tomorrow morning with one child abuse survivor to another, same time, 6 o'clock a.m. Mountain Standard Time, for half an hour. And until then, just take care. Have a great night, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.